Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. Today I'm with Nick Walters. He's the founder and CEO of Hopster. We're here over in his fabulous offices, very cozy and warm in Spitafileds in London. Nick, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for coming over on a cold day.
And well, look, it's great to come in the office and see the environment, and it's a lovely, lovely place to work from. But if anyone didn't know who Hopster were, can you share a little bit about who the company is and a little bit more for our listeners, please?
Yeah, sure. So we are basically the app that helps kids learn through the stories they love. That's how we describe our mission. Mm-hmm. So what that means in practice is we bring together video, games, books, music and other interactive content, all organized around a learning curriculum, and then we deliver that in a single app for tablet, mobile phone and connected TV. So we are available now across about 100 countries in total. Real focus on the UK, USA, Australia, New Zealand and France, about 2 million downloads so far. And we run a subscription model, so you can subscribe to us in the App Store, or we partner with telcos and pay TV operators to be part of their offering places.
Fantastic. And I know you even said you had some customers in Yemen or in other parts of the Middle East and pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's one of the nice things about the App Store is you get to be very global very easily. So we have big customer bases in the UK and US, but yeah, we pick up subscribers from all over the world.
Fantastic. Well, look, why don't you? We're going to jump straight into the questions if that's okay. And as the founder of the company and the CEO, tell us what a typical day in the business looks like for you.
So, I mean, it's probably a cliche to say that days can vary. I would say broadly, I try and spend about a third of my time kind of with the team here. So as Hopster's grown over the last couple of years, we've really built out the senior management team here. So we now have pretty strong functional leads in across all our key teams. So a decent amount of time with them, talking about what they're up to, making sure we're joined up between different departments, making sure everyone's focused on the key metrics, working through the things that we think are going to be important to kind of move the business forward over the next months and years. We try and spend probably about a third of my time externally as well. That's typically with commercial partners, but also with content owners. So from the content owner side, we work closely with people like Entertainment One, the guys around Peppa Pig and Ben and Holly. We work closely with people like Sesame Street. So some of those larger partnerships, I spend quite a lot of time with those guys. We also increasingly work with telcos and pay TV operators across the world. So we've announced deals this year with people like TalkTalk in the UK or Comcast in the US. So spending time with those guys, trying to understand what job they're hiring us to do as Hopster and whether we're doing that job is important. And then also we're in a venture-backed company, so we have a fairly diverse investor group. Some venture capital, a venture capital firm. We also have Sony on the cap table. So kind of investor relations and sort of working with our financiers is also important.
I'm just curious to know, and for those who can't see as the listeners, I've been given a lovely cup of coffee here. Can you tell us a little bit about how your character came about for Hopster?
Yeah. So for those on the podcast who can't see it, we are kind of represented by a small, fluffy kind of furball who is the happy face of Hopster. It's interesting actually because we went through a few iterations on our design, and when we first got started, we did one set of characters that were like very conventionally preschool. They were kind of sort of small, fluffy, but recognizably human animals or real world animals. So we had like a bear and a sort of tiger. And it looked, and we built a prototype with them in it, and we sort of looked at it, and we just thought it's a bit meh, it's a bit wishy-washy. So we threw out that whole look and feel, went back to square one, brought in a different designer who came up with this kind of really distinctive tree-based world with these kind of crazy set of characters in them, and we had like a talking stick and a paper bag that could speak. And the one that really leapt out was this fluffy little guy. So he's really kind of become very organically become a very kind of natural brand carrier for us.
Does he have a name?
Yeah, he's called Fluster.
Okay.
Because he's fluffy. But he's also kind of immortalized because we liked him so much, he was so important. I actually have him tattooed on my arm. So I got that done. everyone was very excited by it, and then our then creative director came in like 10 days later and was like, yeah, I'm thinking of making some changes to that character, and we're like, absolutely no way, like, I'm not having the out-of-date tattoo on my arm.
We're going to talk about employee onboarding later, and I'm curious to know if everyone has to have a tattoo as part of the company culture. But I'll come back to that. Look, tell me about someone who's had an impact on you as a leader, and perhaps even been a mentor to you, and how they've helped you over your career so far.
So my co-founder at Hopster is actually my wife, Mickey. So we were colleagues before we were a couple. So my old job, I used to work at Viacom. I was on the business side there, so I was initially head of Strat and Biz Dev for emerging markets, and then went on to run the Russia business. And Mickey was the head of the channels group. So first of all, I learned everything I really know about content and the creative side of the media business. I learned from Mickey because she's really good at her job. And then when we came over to Hopster, one of the things she's really, I'm still, I would say, a fairly, I come from the kind of more commercial, slightly analytical, kind of operational side of running the business. And Mickey's I think, brings a lot of focus on our brand and our sense of mission. She was someone who really pushed us to think hard, not just about it being self-evident that we were doing good as a company, but how we articulated that, how we kind of defined a mission in a way that we could explain clearly to users and that everyone from the company could get behind. And I think that's been a really powerful driver for the company, and I think it's something I've learned a lot from.
Fantastic. And talking about employee engagement, and that's obviously very important to all organisations. But what are you doing at Hopster from the top to keep your employees engaged?
I think one thing that's really important is transparency. It's a very one of the things that, particularly in a startup environment, you get is it's a roller coaster ride. There are assumptions you have at the start that change, and you regularly get new information coming in, and you do, as a result, you shift course. I mean, what you try and do is have kind of a North Star that keeps you heading in the overall right direction, but you launch products that don't quite work out, or you have to change things around, or you shift your business model or go-to-market approach. And it's very easy for that to get disorientating. It's very easy for people to lose track on what you're doing and why you're doing as a company and how their work fits into that. So one of the things we try and do at Hopster is just be really transparent about where we're up to as a company. So in our monthly meetings, we will look at the P&L from revenue down through cost. Everyone knows if they want to, like, how much money we made at EBITDA level the previous month. We'll go reasonably deep into our subscriber metrics. We'll talk about what deals worked and what didn't work and why. And I think that's really important that people kind of have that context because it then informs what they're doing and why we're doing it. And I think when we've got it wrong at Hopster, it's often been because we've not failed to do that, not often through any desire not to do it, but just because it's easy as the management team to just forget to do that, or have that kind of take second place in a fast-moving environment. And I think we found it's really important to spend time doing that and make sure that people understand what's going on and have that transparency.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing business leaders in today's market?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sort of facile answer to this, which is that there are as many different challenges as there are companies out there. I do think there's a common theme of actually across society at the moment, and particularly manifesting itself in business, around trust. I think obviously financial crisis eroded a lot of trust in financial institutions. You have the whole techlash thing going on at the moment around trust in people's data, trust in people's the information that you're seeing. And certainly in our world as Hopster, whenever we go out and do research and we say, well, what brands do you trust to look after your kids in this kind of sometimes quite overwhelming digital space, parents are really unclear on what brands they can trust. All the stuff in the news at the moment about Facebook and Google, I think, has been an issue for a lot of parents' trust in those brands. A lot of the conventional brands no longer seem relevant to helping you navigate in that world. And I think there is a big challenge for lots of people operating in this kind of disintermediated digital world about how you build and maintain trust with users.
Got it. Fantastic. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received that you could share?
So, and I guess one answer to this would be I once saw Tony Hawk, the skater, speak, and he actually has a couple of startup businesses. And while he was fundraising for one of them, he fell while skating and like broke his pelvis. And he was describing in like great detail like how difficult it was to like fundraise with a broken pelvis. So like, don't break your pelvis seemed like very important advice. But I think a couple of people in Hopster have kind of like encouraged me to think about the distribution side of business and of companies, and I think that's been really important. I think you sometimes have this kind of trope, particularly in startups, which is like, well, if you get the product right, everything else will follow. And I've met a few people, and some of these people I've met, Simon Guild, who was never an advisor to the company, but someone who's always been very good in his advice, who used to be at Viacom, and now does a bunch of work with different startups, was very strong on saying that you've got to really think through how your product fits into a distribution landscape, how it's going to go to market, how that like structurally fits in with competitors, and who the gatekeepers are in that space. And I think that's really good advice. I think you see a lot of startups purely focus on product, get the distribution side or the go-to-market side wrong, and fail as a result. And I think that's something I'd really encourage everyone to think about.
Good. What I'm going to go back to the tattoo now, but tell us a little bit about the onboarding experience. What does it look like here at Hopster, and what's the experience for anyone who joins the company as an onboarding experience?
So we, you can choose where you have your tattoo. Not everyone wants it on the forehead. We're fine with that, just prominently displayed. We try and do a few things. So we have one of the things we've invested in over time is trying to build up our kind of brand book and our culture document. So when you come in, we can tell you about the brand. We can tell you about why Hopster's important, to users, what we're trying to do that makes us different. I think that's important. I think we've found like quite a lot of our onboarding is almost like pre-joining by getting the right people. So we'll try and get people to meet a really good range of people before they join. We'll often get people to interview for their own bosses, so that you know who the person who's coming in to manage you. If there's a change in manager, you've got a good sense of them already, and the people who are coming to join us have met their team or team ahead of time as well. So you begin to get some team fit. And then the other thing is just spending time with the product, just making sure that you understand what this product does, how it's different, beginning to develop points of view on what it's good at and bad at, because that will, we are still a product-orientated company, and that's always going to be a really important part of pretty much anyone's job.
Absolutely. Nick, what's the one mistake you witness business leaders making more frequently than others?
So, I think you see this mistake a lot, but the reason you see this mistake a lot is because it's one of the hardest judgment calls that I think you have to make as a leader. And that's being honest about your failures or what's not working and taking appropriate action. And I think where you often see people come unstuck is when you are, and this is both at startups and at corporates, where you picked a path, you've invested in it, you're starting to get all that kind of sunk cost fallacy bias, and it's just not working. And you kind of keep doing it irrespective. You don't course correct, you don't step back and revisit your fundamental assumptions about where things are going. And you see that mistake in lots of fields. You see it with everything from hiring people to launching new products to market entry. The reason that I would say it's hard to, or you see the mistake often, or the reason it's hard, is because people, it's often very difficult to distinguish between the normal kind of operational process of just trying to get something right, and sure, it's not quite working, but we can optimize it out over time and iterate it to success, and something that's just fundamentally flawed. And I'd say having the judgment and the toolkit to help you make those decisions is probably the most important kind of cross-domain thing that people can get right. And failing to have those things is common.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me a bit about your industry and how you see that now changing over the next 2 to 3 years, and secondly, how do you think that's going to affect your ability to attract and retain the right talent for you?
Sure. So I mean, look, from the business side for us as a company, we kind of play at the intersection of media, technology, and learning. That's broadly our space. Certainly, the media and learning sides are just undergoing massive disruption at the moment. I think we are seeing TV channel viewing really decline. Kids TV viewing in the UK is probably down about 50% over the last 7 or 8 years. That's accelerating. Lots of the big trusted brands that used to help people navigate have kind of gone away, and you're moving into a world where instead of Sky being the one place that you would go, or your pay TV subscriber being the one place that you would go to really organize all of your media for you, you have this much more fragmented environment of direct-to-consumer players like Netflix and apps like us and legacy of TV channels. And that, similarly on the learning side, learning used to be all about what happened in school. There's now a lot more places that you can go for that. So I think we face a very fluid environment. We face things which are going to change, and that's where a lot of our opportunity comes from, if you like. I think what is interesting about that from in terms of attracting and retaining people, is you see some of that fluidity and some of that change. I think also in the kind of the career paths that people are looking for. Where obviously no one's looking for a job for life anymore. But I do think you're seeing more and more that people want to kind of come in and almost do big projects. Want to spend like a couple of years getting really good at something, getting some good experience, and then expect to move on. And maybe expect to move on to a different role or a different company or a different country. And it's going to be, I think, the exception rather than the rule that you have people come in for, and spend 10 years growing with the company. And I think that's really caused us to, one, think about what our metrics are. I mean, if we don't retain someone, if someone wants to move on, is that always a bad thing? And the answer is probably not always. If someone's come in, done a really good job, grown with the company, got good stuff done, and then wants to go traveling or go and live in another country or get an experience of a completely different industry, traditionally you would think of that as a failure. Actually, I think increasingly you're going to have to accept that that's what people want, and it's not necessarily a reflection on you as the company. So I think one, there's getting comfortable with that. The other thing that we try and do, and again, this is not always easy to make time for, but is to really spend time with your people, and particularly the people you want to retain, and understand what do they want from the next 6 months, what do they want from the next 12 months, where are they growing and developing as people, and are we the right place for them to achieve that, and are there ways that we can structure ways that help them achieve that. And I think when we get it right with our kind of people retention and people management is when we get those conversations right.
Got it. Tell me this, Nick. If you were giving yourself 20-year-old self your advice, if you're looking back, what's the one piece of advice that you tell yourself now?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one. I listened to the earlier podcast that I think you guys did with Matt from Entrepreneur First, who I think was saying something along, I can't remember exactly, but saying something along the lines of you had more time than you maybe think you do, and you have more time to take risk. And I would certainly say when I started out, I was very focused on getting on with stuff, and I was very focused on being on a path. I felt like, in a weird kind of way, despite the fact that I finished uni when I was barely 21, you kind of felt the clock ticking. So I went into a management consulting job, which was a great job. I took good experience from, set me up well for other roles. But looking back on it, I wasn't super passionate about strategy consulting for the oil and gas industry, which is where I ended up. It wasn't really what I was excited about. And I do think actually there would have been no downsides and quite a lot of upsides to taking 2 years and saying, hey, do you want to do something different? Do you want to try starting a business? Do you want to go work with a smaller company? Do you want to follow a passion project? Because even if I'd done those for 2 years and it had been a complete disaster, provided I'd taken something from it, provided I'd spent time with interesting people, provided I'd done interesting things, it's not a bad thing to start working in strategy consulting when you're 24 instead of 22. Right? Like in retrospect, like there is that ticking time clock was really not it was not ticking in the way that I thought it was at all. So I'd probably try and I'd probably just say, look, just you've got this really valuable period between 21 and 25 where you really have permission to fail. No one's no one's really relying on you. Like, use that time to do stuff that you care about and find out what you're exceptional at.
Brilliant. Nick, if people want to find out, and thanks for sharing your insights today, if people want to find out more about you, connect with you, find out more about the company, how can they do that?
So Twitter's always good. So I'm at NickBRW on Twitter. So I'm there most days. You can find us as a company at www.hopster.tv. And there's an email address there to get in contact with us too.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.